Now is apparently the time for first home buyers. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I have my stein of coffee. I thought we'd have a look at this article from realestate.com.au that was shared to me by a viewer that was originally from the Daily Telegraph. And, well, it's discussing how this pandemic presents first home buyers with a unique opportunity. Now, more property bulls pushing fear of missing out FOMO for first home buyers? Well, we've got to see. Migration from overseas and interstate is taking a hit. That's going to have an impact on property prices. Wage growth isn't doing too well. Rental strike and the memorandum on evictions for renters is also impacting investment properties. Banks are giving everyone a mortgage holiday, so some people aren't feeling the full brunt of the economic lockdown, and JobKeeper is propping up a lot of businesses and subsidizing wages. So while and coupled to that, our unemployment rate and underemployment rate is sitting at around 25%, with predictions of it to grow later in this year. So, do you think now is really the time to buy, or is 6 months to 12 months the time to buy for property? When we start to have forced sales, guys. So, how the pandemic will compare to other market downturns. First home buyer confidence has hit an 8-year high as rookie property purchases buoy a market hit hard by the pandemic. Now, actually coupled to all those other things I mentioned, consumer confidence has utterly tanked and business confidence has also tanked. So, okay, I guess now is now the time to buy. The impact of the pandemic on Australia's property market remains uncertain, as April home sales slumped to the lowest point in 29 years, but search activity jumped by 50% nationally. Okay. Now, I guess search activity is a leading indicator, but also there's another thing. People are stuck at home, so they're going to be sitting there looking for bargains, looking for opportunities on their phone. I mean, come on. Is this clutching at straws? Is this property bulls clutching at straws? Is this trying to generate FOMO, fear of missing out? I mean, here's the thing. If you're buying a house, consider it a loss. You'll make a loss on it in the next 10, 20 years if our economy stagnates. The problem in Australia is so much of our wealth, of our civilization has been pumped into property. Over 57%. And a lot of that has come from overseas migration, and that is going to take a hit as well. ScoMo is predicting down, 85% down. 85% decrease. That's going to hit Sydney and Melbourne harder than it hits other parts of the country. Then you've got international students. International education is a big part of our economy. That's going to take a big hit as well, and that's going to affect a lot of investment properties. Airbnb has also tanked. That's going to affect investment properties. Now, do you think people are going to hold on with the mortgage holiday they're getting, the repayment holiday they're getting, and hoping things will improve, or do you think they're going to take a forced sale now? Why don't you let me know your suggestions in the comments? Because I would argue, logically, people are going to hold on as long as they can with their investment because they don't want to take a loss. It's just simple psychology, guys. So we're not really seeing, desperation in the market yet. Many industry experts point to these paradoxical conditions brought on by a once-in-a-century event as a time of opportunity in the market. First home buyers appear to agree. Property data group CoreLogic reports, prior to the onset of the pandemic crisis, first home buyer participation as a proportion of owner-occupiers was at its highest level, 29% and 31.4% and 27.1% respectively in our biggest markets in Victoria and New South Wales since January 2012. That's still very low, I'd say. That's pretty low share. It shows you how much of our property is being bought up by investors. And how many of those investors are coming from overseas. We saw on a previous video I did, the Foreign Investment Review Board, when back during the peak, you can see it nearly hit 100% the number of building approvals for foreign investors. But even though foreign investors, particularly from China, has dropped significantly the total amount, the number of people investing is still very high. So while they've abandoned property, there's still over 51% of approvals. While they're arguing that they've abandoned the Australian sector, their investment in Australian property has declined, but overall they're over 51% of approvals. So one could argue that they're going to have an impact on the property sector. The data is matched, and if they're declining even more, which seems to be about 30% a year, that's going to reduce demand for property. So all these things together, is now the opportunity, or is the opportunity coming? And that's the decision people need to make. And that's why I'm skeptical of a lot of what we're being presented with here, to be honest. That's why I'm skeptical with a lot of what we're being presented here. But then again, the thing is, if you're buying a home for a family and you plan to live there for 10, 20, 30 years, if you lose 10, 20% in the first few years, does it matter? Sure, you want to make a saving, but depends on how much. Well, then again, you don't want to hit 30%. That's a big chunk of a mortgage. I would rather you look at something cheaper, or maybe rent for a little bit longer, particularly with rents going down too. Couldn't hurt. The same thing can go when people are saying, when the spruikers, the bulls are saying, buy now and you'll only hit a 20% cut. Well, maybe you rent a bit longer at even cheaper rates. Wait to see what happens to the economy, to see your job secure, to see that everything else is going on. And if property goes up 20%, well, then you just cop a 20% loss that side of the bargain. So you can make the same argument either way, just on how your perspective is. So it depends. It depends if you believe we're heading to a bullish or a bearish property market. So the data is matched by a 40% year-on-year leap in first home buyer inquiries on realestate.com.au in April. Over the same period, investor inquiry had fallen by 20%. First home buyers are well and truly in the market and are more buoyant than you might expect, realestate.com.au chief economist Nerida Konisby said. It is a slower market, and they like to transact in a market like that. First home buyers tend to be really cautious. They like to take their time and know what they're doing, that they're doing something right. It is a slow market. They like to transact in a market like that. Oh, I'm reading it again. Investors are not very active in the market right now. First home buyers and investors usually target similar homes, so the absence of investors is a good sign for those looking to make their first home purchase. Here's a question, guys. Here's an argument put to you. Should we limit which portions of the property sector foreigners can invest in? There's an argument. I know it's very interventionist into the market, but could we say that if you're a foreigner investing in a property, you either have to be an owner-occupier, maybe let's say property under 500,000. Property under you either have to be an owner-occupier and stay there for a certain period of time if you're coming over to work. But if you're just an investor putting onto it to make some money, there's a cap. You can only buy at a higher end of the market. What do you think? What will that cause? More mess for the property sector? I wouldn't have thought about that until I just saw the number of approvals as a ratio of property. And check out my previous video, guys, because I think they're affecting the lower end of, the investor sector. Yeah, it is. It's saying it here. It's affecting first home buyers. So the people who are affected by investment in property are the ones who can least afford it. Another factor that has provided first home buyers with confidence to enter the market is the government's first home loan deposit scheme, which enables home hopefuls to buy a property with a deposit as low as 5% and without lender's mortgage insurance. See, this is concerning, guys. This is one step down the path. It's more government intervention in this regards. It's going to blow up the cost of things. The massive stimulus from the government is important here, said Lincoln Eastman, a mortgage broker with East Financial Services. Policy like that lends to people thinking, should we have a crack can we get one that leads to an increase in activity? Well, true, but a mortgage broker has a vested interest in that industry. And it, frankly, like all the other stimuluses and housing costs, it leads to increased prices. I think we need to look at making houses cheaper. And a lot of that is removing some of the burdens and bureaucracy that you have to put in place to build houses. Buyer's agent Leon Jacques of Cohen Handler believes conditions are almost ideal for those wanting to crack the property market for the first time. I mean, here's an example. I was browsing on LinkedIn, which I do occasionally, and there was a gentleman quite disappointed that that Western Australia hadn't implemented the Section J requirements as other states did, because it's bad for the environment. It's bad for energy ratings. Now, one thing you need to understand is those are all costs. Getting an energy assessment report done on a house cost money. There used to be, when it first came in, under the building code, you could just do deem to satisfy and meet the requirements of the code. That means putting insulation in the walls, insulation in the roof, having certain paint colors. It's quite prescriptive, all with the hopes of getting energy efficient homes. So you're not burning as much energy with your air conditioning as all these other mod cons. Now, the problem with putting that in is it takes a long time for the cost savings of reduced energy usage to offset the cost of those additional costs from the building, because you have to hire another consultant. You need to get an Energy Star rating done of a house, which is, I've seen them dodged. I really have. And you've got putting all this insulation in everywhere, forcing people to put it in every house. Rather than a value add bonus, it has to be in everything. Now, there's the question, guys. Do we need the state to do that? Because that is one simple example where people think it sounds good. We've got energy efficient houses, but these are all costs that first home buyers bear. And the reason I can argue that is because I live in a 100-year-old house that has no insulation in the walls or the floors. It's got insulation in the roof, which is probably flattened in the last 20 years, isn't as effective. But is it affecting my air conditioning efficiencies? No, because I don't have air conditioners, because I live in subtropical Queensland, where frankly, you don't need them for most of the year. You just get a fan or you open your doors and windows. Remember that? Or you play outside if you're a kid. So there you go. I think there's another argument. We're just throwing more money, more government money. And remember, where the government gets their money, it's just taxation and creating more FOMO and encouraging more people to jump in. What would you do to get housing more affordable, everyone? Another argument will be smaller houses. And I know there's a lot of people that want the tiny homes, but the problem with those, and there are two main problems that I have with them. One, they're treated like a caravan, so they ignore a lot of the rules required for other houses in the building code, and some of those are health and safety rules, like separation of toiletry and food production facilities. The stairs to access certain things mean that you can't age in place in them. They're all a lot smaller. So there'll be kind of a stopgap for people. You can't grow old in them, whereas another house you can. And some of the prices people are charging for these little things, it's just insane. It really is. Although if you could build one yourself and get a chassis registered, maybe that's the way to go. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and you want to support us, there's a few ways you can. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay. You can buy merch from HeiseSays, support us via PayPal or Gold Pass from Perth Mint. Take care, guys. I'll see you next time.